fine. Everybody can stare at the black screen instead. As long as Dave can see, everybody else is fine.
I support you, Dave. I want you seeing the screen.
It's the Team Objection Podcast for February 8th, 2022, episode 516. Turns out it's hard to start the show if 2/3 of the cast is dead.
I'm right here. Hello.
Did you die, Chris?
Yeah, I'm dead inside.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's been a known quantity for a long
time. Yeah, I knew that already. We could have, it seems like plan around that maybe.
That's not even the right slide. Let's go fix that real quick, too.
Man.
There, look, we're going backwards to the show. It's Groundhog Day. It was almost just a few days ago.
And Dave is dead because he has kids. So really, I'm the only alive one here.
But see, here's the thing. I actually am a lot like Samson, and my beard gives me powers, and the longer it grows, the more alive I am.
That would be cool. You get points for being cool. You lose points for a biblical reference.
Okay, do you have another like popular media reference that has already siphoned off the Samson reference?
Right. Everything is just copying the Bible already, so anything else that you could copy is just copying the Bible in turn. Yeah.
Really, you've got the Bible and Shakespeare, and what other source material do we have out here?
We haven't had a new story in thousands of years.
Yeah,
not that far off, really.
Yeah.
Originality's dead. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, did you know West Side Story is just Romeo and Juliet? Did you know that?
I know. We talked about that the other day. I was so disappointed because I was like, wow, what a nice original story this is. Turns out it's not.
Turns out not at all.
Turns out nothing is original.
So it's a bit of a hodgepodge show, and we're starting with the Suns, which is not something that anybody had on their planner. I put it on the planner. Why? Well, we're only going to spend a couple minutes on it. I promise. So don't leave. And you're like, wait, they just talked about it. Look, at the end of the day, we just finished the game almost before we went live. I mean, what was it, like 7:25 that game was done? And this road trip just had a nice little back-to-back, and we won both games. And we lost to Atlanta, so the streak was over, but we're now going into Thursday with a big-time matchup against the team that beat us last year in the finals. Remember them?
Mm-hmm. At home, too, which will be nice. We got the Valley jerseys on, and I hope the crowd brings it with energy and starts counting when Giannis is shooting free throws, even though he's actually fixed that problem. But still, it's kind of cool.
He's relatively fixed the problem. He's like 71% from the free throw line, which is respectable.
I meant most of the
good.
Time. Yeah.
So there was a stat that I was reading, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on this. I was going to say we should bring it up at the end. So this works out just fine.
We're doing it now.
So I was reading this thing. It was like the Suns are a big anomaly this year because if they go into the finals or, whatever, postseason, they don't have a top 15 player. So they don't have like a big dog. And they were like, it's so interesting because like other teams that did that, and they go on to this big comparison of like, you have the Detroit Pistons and you have some other teams. And I'm just sitting there being like, wait a minute, like, you didn't say top 5. You didn't say top 10. You said top 15. And I feel like you can make an argument that we have a top 15 player on this team.
I make the argument we have 2 top 15 players.
I mean, so I just thought that the stat was really weird. Like, and then they were like, we don't have a Giannis or an Embiid or like a Steph. And I was like, okay, those are all very different than top 15 players. So I disagreed. I don't know.
The constant Booker's not a top X player is insane to me. Like, people used to say he's not a top 50 player. Okay, well, then he mashed that through. Now he's not a top 30 player. Now he's not a top 15 player. He's not a top 10 player. I don't know what more the guy has to do. It was always, he puts up empty stats, he doesn't win. Okay, now he's winning. Well, he didn't like being double teamed in pickups, so he's a bitch. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
He moved the Raptor.
The mascot. Yep, exactly.
Which, by the way, the Chicago Bulls fans putting Benny the Bull pictures when he was shooting free throws, I thought that was great.
Benny's phenomenal. That's great. I mean, Booker's handled it well. All he's done is laugh it off and score a ton of points since that incident, and that's all he can do at this point. And
so that's what I'm saying. So like, Embiid is better than Booker, right? I mean,
sure,
he's MVP or whatever,
I guess.
And tonight you're going, and I texted this out, like Booker had 33, Embiid had 32. I don't know, maybe there's a last second shot. And
Actually,
he
very
got more.
Similar shooting stats too.
Yeah,
like almost exactly the same. And
I'm not trying to say Booker's better than Embiid, but I'm like, you can't even say he's top 50. Like I'm just confused on that take. And Doug, you're absolutely. Why does Doug know everything? That's my question.
He's too smart.
He always knows everything. But it was Shaq. Shaq said, "I'm worried about the Suns." That triggered it. I'm worried about the Suns because I don't have the big dog. And then I think Brightside did this analogy of like, well, here's what the Suns compare with other good teams. And I'm like sitting over here arguing, no, we actually have a top 15, so we don't need to do this comparison stuff.
2 of them.
You can argue. I was trying to think, if you look at all the All-Stars across both sides, top 10 is maybe tough, but certainly top 15 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
I don't know if I have Chris Paul in the top 15. I have Devin Booker in the top 15, and it's not close.
Mm-hmm.
And the disrespect he gets, and it's confusing to me because what has he done wrong? Stay loyal to a team that was fucking terrible for years?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a little bit of a whiner on the court, a little bit, not as bad as some, but he gets a little bit complaining sometimes. I think that's valid, but this comes from a point of being super competitive.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
So I don't get it. I don't understand what he's done. He's done nothing off court. I mean, yeah, a little bit of it's like a lightning rod from him dating a Jenner, but like, who cares?
It's so funny that you mentioned that. I was in the car today thinking how if Harden wins in Philadelphia, I don't know why I was thinking this way, but you triggered this memory. If Harden wins in Philadelphia, if he gets traded and if he goes and if they win, he's going to be celebrated for being such a little punk bitch and wanting to get out of every scenario. And then you have somebody like Booker who takes a lot of heat. Well, I know Harden takes a lot of heat, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the loyalty and the stuff that he's been through doesn't get celebrated enough. And that's what I don't understand.
And yet Giannis gets celebrated for the exact same thing. And granted, Giannis won, so that makes a difference. I get that. But like, I just watched this YouTube video of there's a YouTube channel that looks at like celebrity houses, and they had Booker on it. And it was really interesting. And Book is composed, smart, appreciates art, appreciates like making his house a home type of thing. Like, the way he showed it off wasn't just like, yeah, my design team put this in because they thought it was cool. Like, it wasn't about all the stuff that young kids like. He was an adult who showed an awesome house that he has because he's a multimillionaire at 25. But still, he was composed and cool in that video. I loved it. I don't know how you don't like Devin Booker.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Hopefully we win a title when we put all this behind us because, some people's perception is not going to change. Even if we do win a title, they'll still hate on Booker or anybody else for that matter. Like Steph, LeBron certainly has their share of detractors, and there's reasons for it that we've been over on the show before. But that was it. Just wanted to bring up, hey, we've been watching. We couldn't kind of not talk about it because Paul and Booker were both named All-Stars. They're on this vital road trip. They're playing well, and we'll see what happens Thursday.
3-1 on a tough road trip. I mean, can't complain.
And we also have to see what happens on Thursday because it's almost inevitable the Suns make a deal of some kind. Probably not a huge one, probably one that improves them on the margins, but you have to think in the next 36 hours and change that there's going to be some change coming.
I will say I'm really glad Dominatus Sabonis got traded because it was being floated around like maybe the Suns will trade Ayton for Sabonis, and I'm like,
no one is going to do that ever.
The only thing I will say is that I didn't even think they could get a player of Halliburton's level. Now that's the Kings being fucking stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But if like De'Aaron Fox had been in that deal, I'd been like, yeah, they were never getting Ayton. Now I'm not saying Halliburton's as good as Ayton either, but at least it wasn't the most ludicrous thing on the planet. It was still never happening.
And there were people who were in favor of it. I actually talked to a coworker of mine that was in favor of trading Ayton because he just doesn't like Ayton. I'm like, why? Why not?
Yeah, but you say in favor, and I looked at that poll, and it was like 90-10.
It was. No, they were smart.
And so 90-10, that's about as a closer consensus as you're going to get on the internet.
It's true.
So that's it for the Suns discussion. You sat through it. You did great. I'm proud of you. You made it to the end. Instead, I have a whole hodgepodge of other topics that I was asked to put in here and did, and now I have no idea where we're going, so I'm ceding the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to do a hot take because we're not doing hot takes, but let that set the table for how much I've loved this game. So Dave, I'm playing this game and I'm thinking of you, and it's because first of all, this game came out last year. It was not even in my top 5. I was like, I don't really care about Guardians as a brand, to be honest. The movies are okay. I didn't like them as much as some others. The comics are fine. They're quirky and whatever. I felt like it was a franchise that was created just to be quirky. And like that was their whole thing. So this game just kept getting great reviews. So I finally checked it out. And it is basically, and this is where I said, Dave, it's like a Mass Effect spiritual sequel. I'll let that sink in for a moment. It's like I'm just playing like the next Mass Effect, and the writing is so good. The characters are so interesting. It's more of like the time that you spend exploring and talking compared to combat. It's probably like 60 or 70% of the time. Like the fighting is the least thing that you do in that game, which is great because the combat it's okay.
You've got my attention now because I will say I did like I didn't dislike the Guardians movies. They had their charm. I very much like games that are a little less combat focused and a little bit more dialogue focused, so that's good. Although I do find it odd that you focus so much on thinking about me. I mean, I've heard about you thinking about me in sleep, in the shower, while you're playing video games.
Yeah, I kind of frame, like, so many games I play now, I'm like, is Dave going to like this game?
I don't know.
Kind of make an argument for it. And it's harder now because we've had you play so many of the games that would be a slam dunk. So now we have to start recommending things a little more in the fringes. And this is one that I'm like, okay, so you get back from a mission, you're on your ship, and they're just chirping the whole time. They're just talking constantly to each other. You almost don't want to move because sometimes that will cut off one conversation, start another conversation. You just want to sit back and like soak it up. So you can go, you talk to each person. There's little like mini side quests. Like you'll find an artifact and it'll be like, you should ask so-and-so about it when you get back to the ship. And you do. And then there's a cutscene and there's dialogue trees. So you get to like choose which, not as in depth as Mass Effect, but you're constantly making choices in conversation about how you want to react, who you want to side with, to like big decisions, like who you want to sell, which is confusing, but you'll understand when you hopefully get there. It's just so well made. And then to this point, there's a song in the beginning of the game. You're playing as the boy, young Peter Quill, and he's listening to a band. I'm just like, wow, this song's really fucking good. I need to go like download it. I look it up. It's a song that's by Star-Lord. I was like, oh, that makes sense. He likes the band Star-Lord. Turns out there is no Star-Lord. They made up a band and they made up a song. They made up 5 songs just for the game.
Impressive.
Yeah, they just like and music videos too. They just so the level of attention and care that went into this game is so incredible, and it's so funny because this is the same company that did the Marvel's Avengers, which is a nightmare. Decent story, kind of fun to play, but then the live service has just destroyed that game.
It sounds, I mean, a little bit like Red Dead Redemption in that sense of like having that feel of a realistic, you're in this place, walking around your camp in Red Dead 2 was like, oh, there are people here. They're having their own conversations. It's like, I'm walking around this place that exists, not this game is only centered around me, which is a cool feeling. So if that's the same type of thing where you're walking around and Rocket and Groot are having a conversation on their own, it's just a cool feeling. It makes you more immersed.
Yep.
So I've heard good things about the characters. I've heard good things about the soundtrack. It was generally well received, but we kind of glossed over the combat part of it, and I'd heard very unflattering things about the combat in the game. Does the fact that everything else is so polished help at least cover that up to some extent?
Yeah, it covers it up, and the fact that you can this brings up another great perk of the game is the difficulty is completely customizable. So I put it on, I think normal, but then I like turned down all the cooldowns. So like I get my abilities just like automatically, pretty much. And I just adjusted everything to where like I can now get through combat pretty quick. And I do it by triggering all my allies' abilities. So for me, that's fun. I just send Gamora like hacking people, Drax throws people into the wall, and then it's just constant. So yeah, the combat it's not bad, but it's definitely the least compelling part of the whole game. But luckily it's so small and it's customizable. You can definitely get through it, have fun with it, and you get to the real good stuff, which is all the story.
I'm in. I mean, it sounds like my type of game where it's not like I'm not a huge combat focused game, never have been. So yeah.
Yep. And so we'll have to talk about Returnal eventually and how that's going. I want a status update, not today, but eventually. So yeah, but I'm playing, I'm like, and it looks great. PS5. So definitely it's on my list for like weird recommendation for Dave.
I have started to, now playing Returnal, I've really understood what the actual PS5 like next gen type of stuff is, with not only just the graphics, because the graphics are kind of stuff I focused on, but like the haptic feedback was holy moly. I didn't realize
it's cool, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, just the idea that now you can put in something that programs the controller that you can squeeze the trigger halfway. Like, and there is a definitive halfway. It's not like, oh, I got to guess how far I'm pushing it down. No, it's a legit halfway down. Then there's a barrier, and then you got to push through that barrier to squeeze it all the way down. It's good design. I love that little twist in gameplay.
I'm hoping it continues to improve. There's been some good examples of it so far. I think sports games, for the most part, have just kind of thrown it in haphazardly. And I'm hoping that this isn't going to be a Wii situation. We remember, like, when there was a Nintendo first-party game, those motion controls were awesome, and there was a whole bunch of third-party shovelware trash that didn't implement them well at all. I'm not saying it's been that divisive for the PS5 so far, but if it's already this good this early in the development cycle, I have high hopes for the, whatever it's going to be, 3, 4, 5 more years to come.
Returnal is probably one of the best examples still, though. Like the rain, like pop, 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 pop.
Yep, you just feel a little pitter-patter,
Yep, I love it. Chuck has a great point, though. Like some friends saying the story is really good. It is, and that it should have been the second movie. I would say totally, except like it can't be because they're doing their own story. So like a lot, like his dad is not Ego at all. He's a totally different guy. The only reason I'm bringing that up is because the whole story, I just think the premise is so cool too. You've taken a established franchise everybody knows. You skip the origin story, and it takes place after this like big galactic war that like we don't know from the MCU, and this is like the fallout. So a bunch of characters were in it. And it shaped like a lot of the events that you're in now. And I was like, any story where you have this great war and now the characters are trying to recover from that, like I'm sold. And then you put like the Guardians of the Galaxy in it, so it's kind of funny, but it's pretty heartful. Like it's just I'm blown away. I was so surprised how much I'm liking it.
I agree that story after the big event is always to me the most emotional and touching type of shows. I mean, there's Star Trek: The Next Generation had an episode that was just called Family after a big fight with the big battle of the Borg.
Yeah,
like the next episode was literally Picard dealing with the fact that he got turned into a Borg and how damaging that was to him, and it was a great episode character-wise.
And it's tough because you have to build to that point appropriately. You have to have this interesting set of characters, you have to have a narrative escalation to get to this climax, to then get to the cooldown. So everything up to that point also has to be good. In this case, of course, a lot of the work has already been done by the MCU to some extent. As you said, it's different, but these are characters we already kind of know coming in. So it's like, okay, like I'm happy to go on a journey with these folks. I like them. It's what made Mass Effect so likable, to bring that comparison full circle, because by the end of 3, I mean, I like a lot of things about Mass Effect, but one of the main ones was I just want to go around with my space crew and encounter situations and have conversations with them on the ship. Like, that's great.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what you get. And there's a fridge that never closes. And I think it's going to go somewhere, but I close it every time I pass it.
Okay. So it's going to be a Cowboy Bebop kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah, I guess so.
Interesting.
Well, and I can say they probably didn't want to do 2, for the reasons you stated, but also, do you want Big Groot or Baby Groot? I mean, Big Groot's better as a playable character.
Yeah, and I really like this version. Well designed, and I think more of a character in this one. Both, like, the voice actor does a great job because, like, you really get, like, when he's mad or frustrated or surprised or questioning, all he still says is, "I am Groot," but the way he intonates is, like, it's great.
Yeah, take that, Vin Diesel. All right, so next up, we have to give Dave some credit.
Yep, finally.
I know Sean hates to do that.
No.
I'll intro it with, I finally forced you guys to watch it because I basically grabbed...
really, you just put it on TV.
Hey, that's what I mean. I grabbed the TV remote and put it on and said, hey, watch this. So yes, I did. And something I recommended on my 2021 top 5 TV shows was this YouTube pitch meeting channel, which you can see the picture of there in the corner. And it was amazing how quickly that took on with basically the entire house, and how much everybody laughed and appreciated it, to the point of, hey, we're going to go to bed. Okay, do you want to watch this before we go to bed? Okay, cool. All right, let's do another one. Okay, let's watch that one. Okay, let's watch one more. Like, we kept going, which I know is always a great sign. And I just, every time I watch these things, I had seen those same, like the one that covered the entire Twilight series is, I think, the peak of it. And so I'm kind of sorry I showed you that first. But it is so funny. It still makes me laugh. I must have already watched that at least 10 times, and it still makes me laugh to this day.
Okay, well, here's the thing, though. Sometimes you have to start with the best if you're only going to get limited exposure. And if something truly is good enough, transcendent enough, then if you take a liking to it, you'll go watch the rest of the catalog, even if it's only 60, 70, 80% is good. It's why I have such a hard time with Haikyuu, which is such a random example, and I'm not going to take us too far afield, but like those first 8 episodes are really important to build a connection to the characters, but everything that follows them is so much better, partly because the first 8 episodes build them so well. But as far as like, well, I really want to sell somebody on the show, I would never have them if I weren't sure they liked anime or something along the lines, if they were really going to be a hard sell, I would never start them there. So here it's like if you give us one that's only mediocre and it's like, oh, it was kind of funny, we might not go back to it. So you might have to hit us with the best one from the word go.
Yep.
I like that it was so it reminded me in some ways of who's the guy that does the like ding ding and he's the critic and he
CinemaSins, yes.
Yeah, and
which I love CinemaSins too, by the way.
I get sick of CinemaSins because I
agree.
And it's the whole point, right? But I'm like, okay, now you're being too critical. Like now this is too much and it's not sometimes it's not even like insightful, it's just like I don't know. And sometimes I'll think like, no, there's a reason for that. It's not a sin. It's just like there's a. So I don't always agree with him. This was really good because I felt like it was funny and it picked on some of the easy targets, but it's also pretty insightful. It never occurred to me, maybe I'm dumb, that it actually might have been a strategy of the producers to make Bella so bland so that people can like imagine themselves as her and identify or like be a blank slate so they can insert themselves in the story. I think there's a greater chance of that than probably anybody would want to admit. And that's a great example of like, that's really funny, but it's also like, oh wow, like it kind of makes you think. And that's what sold me on it for like the rest of them.
And I mean, I think the guy that does the acting is phenomenal in his character development. For people who watch this Twilight one, the whole thing in Twilight, there's an event that occurs in there where it's just morally questionable. If you know anything about the Twilight series, where the werewolf character Jacob implants and imparts himself on a baby, and it's like we're gonna hook up someday.
Yeah.
And the pitch meeting character guy just drops character completely. It's just like, I don't like that. Like just the way he goes in, breaking characters, just how much like he's always smiling, he's always okay on board with whatever happens. And this one he's like, oof, I don't like that at all. Just the way he breaks character was hilarious to me.
And like sometimes like the view is like kind of cynical and like it's all about money, but I'm like, man, half of these decisions, like, why would we do a disservice to our audience and break the story up when it can barely last like one movie? And it's like money. It's like, oh, right. Yes, of course. That's such an obvious joke, but it's that's what they don't care about the art form or what's going to do most service to the story. They just want to take all the money from teenagers that they can.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And have teenagers, try to put themselves in Bella's position because apparently she's super popular, even though she has absolutely no personality.
Yeah, I mean, you would think we would have seen that coming more because to Sean's point, I'm kind of the same way. I'm like, yeah, I guess that's true. We see that all the time in video games. Mm-hmm. How many video game protagonists are basically meant to be self-inserts and blank slates? It's not a thing you see all that often in movies, but it absolutely is here. It's very reminiscent of certain games where it's like, yep, they're going to make the most milquetoast choices possible so that you can see yourself in them. Boy, is that interesting to see in a huge blockbuster movie franchise.
Which is why I like Master Chief is a great example, and I feel like like Halo 4, for example, he started making like his own decisions, and a lot of fans were like, "Oh, I don't like that. Bring me back the old Master Chief." And now I'm wondering, is that why? Because it was just this self-insert thing, and they're like, "Well, now he has agency, so this isn't fun anymore. He's like his own person."
Well, it was. With Master Chief, it was almost more of a cool thing to just have him be this robot, basically. Like, I mean, for the first two games, he's barely spoke, right? Like, he said a few lines here and there, and that was it. Like, you didn't even know what this person was. You didn't even know if he really was a person at some point without getting into the lore of Halo. So, I don't know. I think that people identified with that, especially like in the early 2000s.
He does a thing in Halo Infinite. It's so good, but it's like shocking, and I'm like, I can't believe you did that, and I love that you did that. So, anyways, I'm getting off topic, but like, I much more gravitate towards those characters, which is probably why I hated Twilight, and I very much. Now, here's my question of pitch meeting: am I gonna like it when it goes after a movie that I really love?
I think so, because I think they do. I just think they do a good job of. The whole tagline of CinemaSins is no movie was without sin. And all movies have flaws. All movies kind of have issues or maybe things that you didn't like or something like that. And I think they do it in a humorous enough way that you can still enjoy the movie, but still laugh at the fact that it's not a perfect movie. I don't know. I'm actually very curious to see what you think if you go and watch the MCU pitch meetings because they've got one for I think every single MCU movie out there. So I would like to see your opinion on it because you know those so well.
I'll save it for when you visit again, and we'll go through the MCU ones.
But there'll be spoilers then.
I mean,
you will have watched it by then, so it'll be no problem.
I mean, when am I coming back up? 2025?
That seems to be the pace you're on, yeah. So you have no excuse not to have finished them by then.
That hurts my feelings.
Yeah, I mean, this is excellently well scripted. The dialogue is super fast paced, which I don't mind. I'm sure it's a turn off to a handful of folks, but I actually really like how tight everything is, how rapid fire it is. It's really well done.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go, Dave. You get some credit, but now you're going to have to go back. You know, we have to put you on the spot again now because there's another thing you've given a recommendation for, and now that you're 1 for 50, we're expecting high things because the one was the most recent one.
What? I've got to have another one in there somewhere, right?
You don't recommend a lot.
True. Well, most times I don't get a chance to.
What does that mean? Oh, because you don't watch a lot.
You guys consume media more often than I do.
Because we talk over him so much. That's why.
True. That's true. That's true. We do. You're gonna feel really bad. My question was just, I'm ready to watch this show. I've heard great things, not just from you, from others, and I feel like I've asked this before, but I don't remember. So I was gonna ask you, and then I thought maybe you could talk about it a little bit too. How in the F do I watch this show? Because it's not anywhere that I've looked. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to download, like, whatever the CBS streaming network is.
This isn't on CBS. It's not on Paramount Plus. From my understanding, it should be on Hulu. That's, I believe, where season 3 is going to be, is exclusively on Hulu. This originally was a Fox show on Fox Network. So it might still be on their website.
Could it be on Disney Plus then if it's Fox?
I don't think it's 21st or 20th Century Fox. So no, I don't believe so.
I'm getting my mega media places.
I know your conglomerate off there. Yeah. I am actually gonna take a quick look at that because
if it's Hulu, then I just assumed it wasn't on Hulu and I didn't look hard enough.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Hulu. I'm pretty sure. At least it used to be. When I watched this show as it first came out, because I'm not a huge Seth MacFarlane fan. I don't like Family Guy much anymore, but I appreciate what he's done. I've actually liked some of the movies. I think A Million Ways to Die in the West was actually pretty funny. There's other things he's put out. He's a great singer. Like, there's things he's put out that I like. And I'm a huge nerd for Star Trek type shows. So when this came out, I'm like, I'll give it a shot. I will say the first couple episodes do take a couple getting used to. It does a little bit slow build. They find their footing. If
I was going to take Maisie through it, how do I sell her on it? Like, this is a comedy Star Trek, or like not even really that? Because you've said like it's not like an outright like farcical thing.
It's not. And well, I think the beginning they try to be. I think in the beginning they have a little bit more slapstick. At the beginning they have a little bit more like they try to be a Seth MacFarlane. They try to be Family Guy in space maybe for the first episode or so. But they quickly realize that it doesn't work. And they then just become a funny show that has really good plots and really relatable characters, I think. So, I mean, the premise, the main conflict of the show is set up in the first 5 minutes of the first episode. So I'm not a spoiler in saying this, but in the first 5 minutes of the episode, you find out that Seth MacFarlane's character, Ed Malloy, his wife cheated on him and they got a divorce. And then he gets to be a captain of a ship and she is going to be his first officer. Hijinks ensue. So that's the premise of the show, essentially, is that starts out with how they deal with their, obvious conflict that comes from that.
Did anyone ever get a divorce in Star Trek?
This goes into a little bit of a deeper dive of Gene Roddenberry and kind of the weirdo that he was, but they don't really mention marriage that much in Star Trek. There was one marriage that I'm aware of that actually took place in the entire Star Trek universe, but marriage wasn't much of a thing.
So that almost, my first thought when you said they get a divorce and then she's his first mate is like, that could be funny because it seems like they're shining a light on something that never came up in the original. So that in itself is almost satire.
Almost, yeah. But I would say this is not satire. The Orville is not satire of Star Trek in any way. To me, it's a homage to Star Trek. It's more Star Trek to me than Picard or Discovery is. And those are actually Star Trek shows. I have confirmed it is indeed on Hulu.
Oh, well,
There you
Great. Maybe I'll start. And it's 30-minute episodes.
Hour. They're actually an hour.
They're an hour.
Yeah, but with the commercials that are on there, it's 44 minutes or whatever.
Oh,
it
okay,
is.
so they're the 40-minute ones.
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not like the HBO hours where
Correct,
you
yeah.
sit there for 60 minutes.
They had commercials, so it's like 48 minutes or whatever it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to watch it. It'll be one of my late night shows. I probably won't start it yet because I'm going through Peacemaker. Once Peacemaker's done, I think that'll probably be my next show.
And this is good timing because from everything I've heard, season 3 is supposed to be out before too long. I think it just got delayed, but season 3 should be out before long.
Okay.
So
speaking of Peacemaker, are you going to watch it?
I haven't planned on it. If you mentioned it, I'm sorry, I don't recall.
That was so strange because it sounded like you said you did already, and then it turns out you have no plans at all.
I really am not even aware of it.
I don't know because you surprise me sometimes because you really liked Invincible and you really liked. There was another show I thought. Oh, did you watch The Boys? You don't watch The Boys either.
I did not. I do. I just realized I need to call out Doug Fiala. You're right. There was 2 marriages. One happened in the movie. Deanna Troi got married to Riker. And then there was also Miles O'Brien got married to the Keiko lady. And that was in Deep Space Nine, I think. So,
but even then, those were like, they happened, but they weren't exactly focal points of the story.
No,
they were almost like, yeah, that happened. Great. Anyways, back to Star
Trek. What is that? 2 and 3,000 episodes? Like,
well, Picard is married to his work, so
yeah,
exactly. So I don't know. I don't know enough about. If Cody was here, we could talk about Peacemaker. All I will say is like a lot of the jokes don't really land for me super well, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just not like a James Gunn guy. Maybe that's it. I think he's really talented. His story I like a lot, and so I'm enjoying Peacemaker. But a lot of the jokes is like not there. But seeing John Cena, he needs his dove symbol engraved on all of his weapons. And he doesn't have it, so he's complaining about it on a sniper. And so he draws like a dove with a Sharpie. And I don't know if this was intentional. It was the funniest joke in the whole thing, watching John Cena terribly draw a dove onto a gun and then curse when he's done because it's awful. I was like, that's the best. I don't think Gunn wanted that, but that's the best joke of the whole thing. So Peacemaker.
Well, there was a clip that went viral last week of John Cena like ad-libbing this list of people that I don't know who the characters are because I haven't seen the show, but he's talking to somebody who apparently had something to do with his dad being killed, and he's listing off just ad-lib all these different celebrities and names of people that he should have killed instead of his dad, and that was also getting great reviews, but that's also not on the show. That's an extended take.
Yeah, and there are sometimes, like sometimes you get criticism of Lil Wayne. I read this somewhere is that he's so good he can just freestyle, but a lot of times his freestyle, it's not as good as if he actually sat down and wrote something. It's like, yeah, it's fine and it's cool that he's doing that, but maybe you were better off just writing an album. And there are jokes that I'm watching and John Cena is like trading barbs with people, and I'm like, I guarantee you that was ad-libbed, and that's pretty impressive. Probably would have been better just write a real joke though. But on the other side of it, James Gunn said, I wanted it to be an intro, like a sequence to the show that people watch every time. And I've watched it every time, and you should just pull it up. It's just John Cena and the cast dancing, super serious face, a really silly dance, has nothing to do with the show at all. Not even close. Like characters who are enemies, like dancing together and no one's smiling. It's fascinating. I love it.
So it's non-canon is what you're saying.
Or the most canon.
No. Yeah. And it's just John Cena just like being funny. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, people I think are surprised. I mean, look, I'm a wrestling fan, so I have a little bit more insight into his background, The Rock's background, Batista's background than most, but it's like, if you have any idea some of the dumb shit they were forced to do when they were in wrestling, you would not be surprised by the fact that they're good off the cuff and also not afraid to be like in roles or situations or scenes that might be seen as shameful. Because they've done way worse with wrestling than they have in anything in their acting career since. Like, people wanted to make Tooth Fairy jokes about The Rock. It's like, you think he fucking cares about being in Tooth Fairy? He made $100 million from that, and he did 64 worse things with WWE.
I wonder if he died a little inside each time he had to say, do you smell what The Rock is cooking? I mean, he would hold that face, I think, longer and longer as he went on, where he'd be like, Like, just held that face just longer and longer.
I don't think he dies at all, Dave, because I think he so owns it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they just own all their stuff, and then it makes something that is uncool kind of cool, because you're like, good for you, just owning this really silly thing.
You know, I feel like I tried that in elementary school where, like, I got picked on and I'm like, no, I'm going to own my problems. And then I'm like, yeah, I know, I suck at blah, blah, blah. And they're like, Dave sucks at blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, but you can't own it like that. We got to work on it. We'll work on it, Dave.
Yeah, it turns out elementary school Dave didn't have the nuance required for that type of response.
I mean, to be fair, in the history of this show, 30-year-old Dave barely had it, so.
I'll be your coach. Your life coach.
Okay. To learn how to deal with bullies?
Deflect, yeah.
I mean,
so when Chris is mean to you, we'll work on it.
Yeah, like when I said you only had 1 in 50 good recommendations, you'll have a comeback ready to go.
I mean, the problem is I couldn't think of the other good recommendation I had, which would make it 2 out of 50, which is actually 1 out of 25. So that's even better.
See, no, you got to come back and you have to immediately punch back at Chris's recommendation. The problem is he's had good recommendations lately. So you got to wait until he's a bad one, and then you're going to have fuel to punch back. That's what they always say. This is mental health, and this is how you stay mentally healthy. Punch back every time.
This is how you stay mentally healthy. Let the thing inside of you fester until you realize that you've got the upper edge, and then strike.
Yeah, in a way. But attack something else on Chris.
Yeah.
If you don't have a recommendation, attack something else.
I mean, the problem with Chris is that he is very meticulous with his recommendations, so he makes sure that...
I know, that's what I just said, so you gotta attack something else.
But, okay, Chris, you've got gray hairs. Oh shit, I've got gray hairs. Fuck, okay.
No, they are. I also have a weird gap in my hair today. Look at what's going on with...
It's kind of cool. It's like you ran like some
I don't know what happened. It wasn't like that earlier, but it's all fucked up.
We'll work on it, Dave.
Yeah, we got to work on it.
Oh, you can go to a master class of comebacks.
Or you can go to you're a South Park fan, Dave, so you can just go to Cartman School.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
Like, think about possibly the most infamous bit the show ever did.
Was killing his... So I should kill your parents and feed them to you?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Oh.
Got it.
Because he just takes shit that whole episode, and then he plans the ultimate revenge, and poor Scott has no idea, and, his life's been irrevocably changed. So that's what you're going to have to do. If you can't come back with like, snappy one-liners, you're going to have to go the long-haul approach.
Better watch back.
I will not.
That's fine. Chris doesn't love his family anyway. Just kidding. He does. If the family happens to be watching, I know they do sometimes.
Maybe I'll do it with your roommates instead.
Why? He doesn't care about his roommates.
But then in the end, it'll work out because then he'll have his own house and then he'll be lonely. And
loneliness is the long con, yeah.
This is revenge on me. I'm trying to be your coach.
It's not working.
Should have coached him better. He wouldn't be going to this kind of a desperate ploy.
It's true. I am in desperation mode. I am heaving up from half court the desperation shot to win the game, and it's not working.
Dave, you got to commit to something. You got to give it at least 2 weeks. Come to my class for 2 weeks. If I can't turn you around, then fine. You can go off on your own.
This is what the next 2 episodes of the show is going to be, right? Sean life coaching me.
Yeah, although I'm going to do the comeback class. Like, did you ever see Borat when he goes to the school of how to be funny?
Yeah.
It's going to be that bad. Like, I'm going to be walking you through terrible jokes that aren't funny to begin with, but then when you break it down, they're even worse. So that's what it's going to be.
You're going to have this joke, and you're going to say the opposite of what you mean, and then you say, not.
Yeah. Or it's opposite day. It's another classic one.
I'm rubber, you're glue.
We're going to break down sticks and stones, may break my... But yeah, it's going to be great.
How much does this class cost?
$1,900. I realize 1,000's too low, but I said it, so I was trying to go as high as I could within the 1,000.
I was for some reason I thought you were going to go in another denomination. You're like 1,000 pieces of gold.
I should have. That would have been smarter. See, the student has become the master.
It's already happening. Yep. You can come to my class for 2,000.
No, my class is working. Is what that means.
I've already got the value, and I'm not paying you.
Yeah, I think I'm with Dave here. I think he's already superseded you now.
This isn't fair.
Dave, what are you going to charge for your class?
2,000 pieces of gold.
That's smart.
2,000 pieces of gold, though. So that's actually a lot. I only did $2,000.
You did $1,000, sir.
I know. I did 1,900.
Okay.
Because I tried to kick it up at the end.
I found a promo code online. Actually, it's only 1,000.
I'll give you all my Doge coins. I'll give you
Those
my
aren't worth
NFTs.
anything.
I'll give you my NFTs.
I'll give you my Shiba Inu coin. How's that?
This is bullshit.
I actually want to ask Dave about cryptocurrency, but it's going to have to be an off-air discussion. So
Here's it's a scam. Don't get into it.
yeah, don't do NFTs. Just stop. This is the show's official stance on NFTs. You never asked for it, and we're never going to talk about it again. But don't. That's the end of our NFT discussion. It's not even a bullet point. It doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Have you seen that there's now edible NFTs?
Great. Seems
That
to
defeats the
It
purpose.
sure does, Dave. You're absolutely right. So that brings us to the end of the episode. If there's anything else you want to talk about, it was our hodgepodge episode. You can do it now on the outro slide. I don't have to end right this minute, but it's up to you.
I mean, I'm pretty good at my class NFTs. Yeah, so they're trying to do an NFT they're relating it to real world items, but there are challenges, as I'm sure you can imagine. It's not really working. It just seems like it's a scam.
Speaking of a scam, the Pro Bowl was last week, and it's really funny to see the world react to "we don't care about this." Like, I haven't watched the Pro Bowl in years, and I don't really care about the NFL that much as is. But holy crap! Like the fact that the entire world is now like, yeah, this sucks. We shouldn't even have it is kind of amazing to me.
A little late on that take. The rest of the world is.
I'm aware.
People have been saying that for as long as I've been alive, so I'm not sure why this more recent one. Probably because there's even less tackling than ever. I mean, they might as well just play flag football at this point. I almost want to watch people play flag football or do something different than
I was going to say, that would actually be a little bit, if you're trying as hard as you can, but in flag football. That'd be cool.
They actually did years ago. They actually had a Pro Bowl thing in Hawaii where they had what they called the Beach Bowl, and it was flag football, but it was just on the sand, so it was like a new wrinkle in that. And unfortunately, somebody tore up their knee so badly that their entire career was affected, and the Beach Bowl ended that day.
Yeah, which is the concern. I mean, it's a contact sport, so how do you do it? But I mean, as much shit as the NBA All-Star Game gets, and it deserves some of it, at least the majority of it resembles basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you got to do. So the players, a lot of times, incentives are tied to them making the Pro Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So just have like contract incentives for winning the Pro Bowl. Like you can make X more amount of money if you win the Pro Bowl.
But okay, you're going to do that. You know, the roster is 60 or whatever it is. You know, you have 60 players on there, plus all the people who are like would have made the Pro Bowl, but then are in the Super Bowl, so they're not playing in the Pro Bowl. So do you give them the incentive too? How much can you possibly give them an event that doesn't make much money that would really make a difference? Like you give them $50,000 each if they win, $100,000 each.
So you don't pay them. And I'm not going anywhere weird with this of like you do sexual favors.
That's right.
I'm not doing that.
You give them 1,900 gold.
I mean, like, I'm wondering if there's a way, like, so when I'm saying incentives for making the Pro Bowl, that's with the team and their contract. So just do something similar with winning the Pro Bowl. Like if they win it, I don't know how NFL does caps, and NBA does like if you're the best player, there's only so much money you can make per every contract negotiation.
They don't have that.
Up it for the Pro Bowl.
They don't have that. They have a hard cap in the NFL, so it's really difficult for that sense. You cannot go over that cap number. There's no soft cap. There's no, okay, well, we're re-signing our own guy. Doesn't exist. They don't have that. So, and even so, like, yeah, you have that little incentive, but it's also a sport where you can get cut immediately on any moment and just have the rest of your contract voided. And so if you get hurt in that game, the extra bump you'll get for that 1 year is not worth the rest of your contract being voided, basically.
I mean, well, that's true. But with that said, just get rid of if you're going to have the Pro Bowl, try to do something to incentivize the players. If you're worried about them getting hurt, then just don't have the Pro Bowl at all. Because what we're getting is of no value to anyone.
It is absolutely true, and the skills competition stuff is actually kind of cool to see, like what the quarterbacks can do. Some of the skills competition stuff is actually really cool.
Yeah, I still don't care about that either, but I care about that a lot more than I care about the Pro Bowl.
Yep, exactly.
And they also have a timing issue, which again is not new. But I mean, if you're going to do it in the week in between the conference championships and the Super Bowl, that means you're 4 weeks removed from the end of the regular season. So the players who weren't even in the playoffs, who made the Pro Bowl, how much are they even going to be in physical shape?
Yeah.
Their offseason started a month ago. Like, imagine that the NBA All-Star Game was the week before the finals. And then you're like, all right, let's see what's a non-playoff star. Bradley Beal, what's he been up to? Because, he puts in a ton of work in the offseason. Bradley Beal, let's see what he done. And he shattered his ACL because he hasn't played in 4 weeks. Whoops.
Yep. Paul George, that type of guy, he's not going to make the playoffs. LeBron James, might not make the playoffs this year, so...
Yeah, it's all that's really weird to me too. And then obviously you're not getting the teams who made it to the Super Bowl. They made it to the Super Bowl. They probably have some Pro Bowlers on the team. I'm sure there are exceptions in history, but like, there's a good shot.
I have to assume that there's never been a Super Bowl team that didn't have a Pro Bowler.
Right? Like, so the whole thing seems dumb.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah, they're going to take my advice and incentivize it, even though I know like getting hurt doesn't make that extra thousands of dollars you would have made worth it. But like, either incentivize it or just don't hold the damn thing at all.
It seems like that's where they're going, kind of like the slam dunk competition, where it's like, we're going to go away on hiatus for a little while, and then when people get nostalgic about it, then we'll bring it back once we actually have good dunkers, which seems like where the slam dunk competition's going, because have you seen the roster for this year's? Holy crap.
Who is it?
Cole Anthony, Obi Toppin, Juan Toscano-Anderson, and somebody else that I can't remember.
Oh, so it's bad. I thought you were trying to say they did go on hiatus, and now it's like John Morant and like a bunch of other people. Oh,
I mean, to me, and this is a disaster that LeBron James never was in one dunk contest. He should have been in one. It would have been awesome. I think it would have helped his legacy.
And he could have done it when he was still super young, before he really had advanced beyond it, and before he really became so image conscious. Or maybe he always was, maybe even coming in just because he was so hyped. But yeah, like his first, second year, there's no reason why he shouldn't have done that.
No.
And now, or even 5 years ago, at that point, he'd won titles and he was, in the back end of his career. I get it. But back then...
Yeah, I miss the days of MJ, Chuck Rock. Of course, I miss the day when there was any star at all in the dunk contest. Like, was it Dwight Howard?
I mean, Dwight Howard was a big one.
Like, Aaron Gordon's not a star. I'm sorry. Zach LaVine, not a star.
Zach LaVine only now becoming maybe that type of guy, but he wasn't when he did the dunk contest.
Yeah.
I mean, Blake Griffin was kind of a star when he did his. He was a big name, that's for sure.
I thought he was after Dwight Howard, though.
I think that was a similar time frame.
I meant before for my argument to make sense. But yeah, I mean, for years it's been like, yeah, great. These are freak athletes, and I'm sure. I mean, whatever. I'm never gonna do anything even close to them. But like without the star power, I just don't care.
Well, and the worst part, there actually are good dunkers. Like Derrick Jones Jr. is a mediocre NBA player, but a great dunker. Aaron Gordon is an above average NBA player, great dunker. But when you have things like what happened to Aaron Gordon a couple years ago,
twice,
yes, like it removes any fun of the dunk contest.
Yeah.
I've said forever they need to go to either a fractional scoring system where you do 0.5s, or just go to a something like that, like where you go, or maybe at a dunk out of 20 you score at 20. Just, you need to have more variation, because basically if you dunk the ball you're getting a 42. Like, okay, great, where's our variation? How can you determine who's the best dunker when there's that thin of a razor of margin?
Yeah.
Although some of the best dunk contests have been those dueling 50s, and you can argue about whether they should exist or not, but the drama between like Levine and Gordon was because they kept getting 50s, and it's like, well, now what are they going to do?
Yeah.
They only came in with a couple planned dunks. Maybe they thought of all four, the two for each round. They didn't think up ones for tiebreakers, but then, Dwayne Wade fucked it all up. So
it's much much like I do on this show when I give ratings. I don't like giving perfect ratings, because that means I can't do anything more. That's it. Mm-hmm. So if you give 50s for every cool dunk, it's like, great, where do we go from here? How do you recognize that the first round dunk, which was not as good as the second round dunk, but you rated them the same, like there's no differentiation. So I wish they had the 0.5s. I think it would fix it.
I mean, I know we're being silly about a dunk contest. That actually is a great way to fix it, is make the ratings actually matter. Because otherwise, what are we watching? Like cool dunks, but that's it. There's no real competition because it's all made up. It's like whose line? Nothing matters.
If you do a cool dunk, it's like, well, wait, the judge didn't give a 10? Well, he must hate that guy, which is what happened with Dwayne Wade and screwed it all up. So you're right, Chris.
Yeah, you're also a part of it too. Like you said, Derrick Jones Jr., not a great basketball player, but a good dunker. Well, I don't care about the guys who can only dunk. It's cool seeing Amar Stoudemire, who's rookie of the year, all-star all the time, being able to go and dunk it. And he's a Sun, so that's awesome too. But like all these players who are great at the game, but then can also dunk it. That's what I care about.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's only good at dunking. It's like, I mean, great, good for you. Have fun riding the bench.
Which is what basically all of the dunkers in this year's I mean, Cole Anthony's had a decent year. Obi Toppin's finding his way, but like, it's not good. It's not worthy of watching.
Yep.
Well, speaking of things that are worthy of watching, this episode is over. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week. Regular stuff. Daylight savings time looms. It's not here yet. It's a March thing, but at some point, anybody who's not in Arizona is going to have your viewing time change. So we'll warn you about it as we get closer, but that's not for now. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, or youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new videos 6 or 7 days a week. We'll see you next time.